to speak about today is I want to define what faith is and why it is important that your faith requires action. It is impossible to please God without faith. So obviously this topic about faith is very important. But let us find out exactly what does faith mean and how can I apply it to my day-to-day life. And here is something first of all that I want to share from my own experience, what I've seen faith do in my personal life. So we have to rewind back all the way to when I first gave my life to Jesus. I had some moments where I saw God work through my life in ways that I couldn't even ever have imagined. And I've seen him do creative miracles. I've seen him change people's lives in a moment. And I know that personally to myself, I couldn't have achieved any of this. This was purely by the grace of God and by the goodness of God. But what sparked these things to happen? So during my first week of giving my life to Jesus, I remember praying for some of my friends who were with me on high school. As I laid my hands on them, they started to cry and they encountered the presence of God in ways that I've even not encountered His presence. They're busy encountering His presence. And I thought to myself, how is it that I haven't necessarily experienced this to the fullness? They are experiencing this, but still God is using me as a vessel to encounter people. And that caused me to wonder, like, why is this happening? Why is this important to Him? I remember a couple of weeks just after I got saved, I prayed with a boy with this big of a tumor on his hip. It was a cancerous tumor, and the tumor disappeared in front of my eyes. At that stage, I didn't think I am qualified to pray for the sick. I didn't really believe that I had enough faith to pray for the sick. And suddenly I'm seeing miracles happen in front of my eyes that I've never even read in books about. How is this? How is this possible? And this is when I realized that I have faith to pray for the sick. I have faith to lead the lost to Jesus. But if I don't step out and do anything, none of these results will happen. And I realized that faith is not a feeling. Faith is action. So sometimes you feel doubt in your heart praying for the sick, they still recover. And most of my most radical miracles that I've seen, in my heart I was doubting, but God still healed them. And doubt is not the opposite of faith. This is just something that I feel it is important for us to understand. If you doubt that somebody will not get healed, that isn't evidence that you are unfaithful. Most of the times we feel in our hearts, but what if something doesn't happen? But faith is not a feeling. Faith is action. Therefore, it is important to step out in faith and to pray for the sick, to step out in faith and to lead the lost to Jesus, to even step out in faith and to prophesy. So, about a year ago, we were doing an high school outreach in one of my local high schools. And we were busy sharing on the good news of Jesus and what He actually did to them. And these teenagers were so touched by the love of God. And after a week's outreach, I said, you are now commissioned to practice your faith. And I told them, like, you are now the vessel. If you depend on somebody to come from the outside and to share the gospel or to pray for the sick, then you do not have faith. And I asked about a classroom of about 20 teenagers. I asked, how many of you currently have some physical disability, sickness, or you're an athlete? And 8 of those students put up their hands, and they had some serious injuries. 2 had broken collarbones, 3 had permanent spine damage, and there was one with fractures in his face. he crashed from a motorbike, and many more. And I asked them to stand up, and I said, I'm not going to be the one to pray for you. I want your peers to pray for you, because then we will know that this didn't come from an outside man and an outside person. It came from somebody personally who you know. And I said, so now the students are going to pray for each other. As we facilitated this moment of prayer, I asked, who is doubting currently? All of them put their hands in the air. And I said, the difference between faith and unbelief is action. It's not the way that you feel currently. And I said that they have to stop praying for each other. Out of all of those 8 injuries, every single one of them got healed in about 10 minutes. All of these kids got touched by the love of God, and they got healed. And it happened through other 15 and 16-year-olds praying for them. And this is really what we are called into it. God calls us to commission our own faith. He commissions us into our faith. And let's take this back to scripture so I can read what Jesus taught on faith, so we can see what faith means today. So I want to read Matthew 9 verse 6. But that you may know the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. He then said to the paralytic, rise, pick up your bed and go home. So Jesus just encountered a paralyzed man. He didn't pray for him. He didn't lay his hands on him. He only spoke to this man, and he said, take your bed and go. Pick up your bed and go. He gave this man permission to exercise his own faith. Once you encounter Jesus by faith, a miracle happens. It's when we look towards him. This is where things start to change. Luke 17 verse 14. When he saw them, he said to them, go and show yourselves to the priest. And as they went, they were cleansed. After these lepers encountered Jesus asking for healing, Jesus didn't pray for them. He didn't lay their hands on him. He commissioned them to practice their faith. Jesus grants permission for us to exercise our faith. What is written in the word becomes the standard. And then there's this another story in Mark 2 verse 9 where this bedridden man's friends brought him through the roof of a house. And Jesus says, once again, rise, take up your bed and walk. And what was interesting about this story, this man's friends brought him to Jesus. Their faith caused their friend to be healed. This is, even my faith can cause somebody else to be touched by the love of God. Your faith is not limited. Your faith can reach regions. It can reach your friends. It can reach people. But here is the key. It is your faith requires action. So you can sit down and you can say with your words that you believe. You can say with your words that I know you will be healed, but not pray for them and they will not get healed. If you have a sick person and you believe they can get healed, go to this person and pray for that person. The action is what determines the faith, not the feeling. Feeling is not faith. Emotion is not faith. Your action is faith in that moment. And then we will start see miracles, signs, and wonders happen. So this was just a short teaching on what faith is. But I want you to be encouraged. And I want you to step out in faith and see God use you to build on his kingdom.